Good evening, you're listening to Sunny G103.5 FM, Glasgow's community station. Very special programme up tonight as we talk and debate about the most important issue that I've ever experienced in my lifetime. That is, of course, the Scottish referendum independence debate. Tonight I have two of my good friends, good colleagues in the hip-hop community. Daniel Quinn, you okay, Daniel?
I'm okay, yep, very well.
And Mr. Darren McGarvey.
How yous doing, troops?
So, AKA, I should mention, Weedy.
Yep.
And Loki. So I might get the names mixed up tonight because I do know he's under a few guises. So people, tonight's programme, the format's going to be like this. We're going to ask our guests to speak about their beliefs and how they think Scotland should be either better independent or better as part of the Union. We're going to cross-examine that and see why our guest speakers' opinions, if they're valid and if they still stand up. And then we're going to take questions from the audience as well. Okay, people? We took a little coin toss a minute ago, and I believe Mr. McGarvey, aka Loki, is up first tonight to tell us a little bit about himself and about why he believes Scotland should be an independent country. Okay, Loki?
Thank you, Steg, and thanks to yourself and Sonny Govan for putting this together. It's really encouraging and inspiring to think a community radio station in a community like Govan is given a platform and just like two ordinary folk to talk about things that are really important to them. So just first off, respect for that. It's amazing. I don't know if your listeners are familiar with me, if they're not. My name's Darren. I go by the artist name Loki. I'm an MC, work in the community as an activist, as an artist. I'm training to be a journalist. All of my work and all of my experience really and through my teenage years and into adulthood, and now I'm 30, all of my experiences, I've always been involved in trying to draw attention to some of the struggles of the communities that I grew up in. So some of the areas in particular that I've got direct experience with are the sort of the social conditions and how they create low aspiration in people, almost a kind of spiritual dereliction where people often aren't even thinking on the wavelength of going anywhere further than the locale that they were born in. And obviously that comes down to a personal choice, but at the same time it happens at such a mass scale that questions need to be asked about how the society operates and what are the real opportunities out there in terms of, you hear people talk about social mobility, and social mobility, for anyone who's not familiar with it, that just means what are the chances that you, if you want to get out of Govan and go somewhere else and aspire in life to maybe get into another way of work and educate yourself, then social mobility is about what barriers are there preventing you from doing that. And all I see all through my life is an increase in the barriers that people face. The most heartbreaking thing about it is many of them aren't aware of it, because you don't, it's like the old boil a frog thing, like if you throw the frog in the hot water then it'll jump out, but if you boil it slowly then it'll just die in the water and it won't realise it. I have experience, obviously, myself as well, living in poverty and how that affected my life and my family. So in these communities there's a constant threat of violence which contributes to things like chronic stress. Young people, kids growing up in their very early years picking up stress and habits from their parents who themselves may have been young when they had kids. And so what we see is this cycle of stress which leads to destructive, often antisocial behaviours, addiction, violence, and to be honest, for me, I think, I know that this stuff happens all over the world, and I know it is a part of a society, but I think that the amount of wealth that's generated in Britain, the amount of wealth that's generated in the West generally, there is just no longer any excuse for so many people to be suffering. Some people suffer from starvation and disease. We're lucky. That's a good thing about the Union. We've got access to those kinds of medicines and expertise and research, but that's not strictly just the Union, modern countries can do that anyway. So that's sort of some of my thinking related to that. And I'll just finish by saying I'll be voting yes, not only because I believe in the principle of the question we're being asked, that no one other than us can really govern and look after our interests better. The other aspect is that I also want to vote yes because I think it might be the first step in kind of dismantling the UK state as it stands just now. And I think that's dead important for the world in general.
Thank you very, very much for that, Darren. Daniel?
Okay. Well, I think I'll start with a story. 5 years ago, I found myself unemployed. I found myself being told that I was going to be a father for the first time. And the one thing that I wanted to do was give my daughter somewhere safe, secure and stable to grow up. What I wanted to do was be a role model. And the first thing I decided in that period was that I was going to get employed, and I was going to get employed in a job that had a clear progression route. It had the opportunity to progress. So what happened was I spoke to JCP, I spoke to the job centre, and I asked, what is there out there for me? Based on my experience, the only experience I'd worked in a baguette shop, I'd worked in a bar, I'd done sports coaching, and I didn't want to pursue that. I just finished a HND in sound production engineering and quite liked the analytical technicality of it. So I said, I would quite like to go into admin. So what they proposed to me was that they could look into what voluntary sector organisations are running a thing called Future Job Funds. That was a Westminster subsidy that they gave to employers to take young people on for 6 months, aged 16 to 24, and build them up and hopefully lead them on to sustainable employment. So that did happen. I'd done my 6 months as an admin assistant. I then progressed to an administrator, and I went into a very diverse role of a project coordinator. And I worked within the additional support needs schools in Lanarkshire, trying to help young people to get a positive progression route beyond school. From then on, I've went to work with another organisation. I found that due to that, that opportunity that was available to me through Westminster, I was able to give my daughter a better life. I was able to give my partner a better life. I was able to give myself a better life. And that immediately struck me as something that I was really thankful for. I was thankful that we had those resources. I was thankful that this was shared among the UK, and for the first time in my life I really felt a benefit from Westminster. I think it's important to say, 3 years ago, if I'd have been asked the question of independence, without that experience, my gut reaction would be to say yes, because I feel like Scotland have this underdog mentality. They have this fend for yourself mentality. And as an artist, myself, one thing that all artists support, and I think the support for the Yes campaign in Scottish hip hop really puts a stress on this, is radical innovation. The ability to do something different, the ability to stand up for yourself and do what no one else is doing and really strive forward with that. And I support that 100%. I support risk taking, calculated risk taking, and I support radical innovation. What I also support is partnerships, and I believe that every artist, probably more so than innovation, really treasures partnerships, because there is no artist in this country, in the world, that can make a project by themselves. Even if they go and record it in their bedroom, they mix and master it, they make the beats, they put it out. You think of, what are they pressing it on? They're pressing it on CDs. What are they recording on? Who are their partners? Who are their networks in the community that are going to help them push this out further? So more so than probably, or equally as much, I should say, to radical innovation, I would probably say, I fully support partnerships. And what the union has just now is they have a partnership between 4 countries. And I do think, perhaps England takes the bulk of that. They are the biggest partner, the most populated area, and it can be, very oppressive to some people, but the benefits which I've experienced, which other people have experienced, the amount of people helped into work from these different subsidies, the ability to move, to get work down there, the freedom of this united family is inspiring to me as a Scotsman and as a Briton.
Thank you very much for that, Daniel. To go back to your little story you said a moment ago.
Yep.
Do you think the opportunities are available for everybody?
Yeah, I seriously do it. I came out of, an academic structure which I didn't really excel at, and it was an entry-level job. To further on that, what happened was when the coalition came in, they done away with future job funds, saying it was a waste of resources, and I was really upset about that, and I thought, no, this is a great thing. In some areas it expanded employment by up to 80% in our target audience of 16 to 24 year olds, and what the Scottish Government done, quite rightly so, was saying, no, this was a great project, let's release it from us, let's put money into this, and they released Community Jobs Scotland. The problem with that is they don't have the funds or the resources to emulate the success of future job funds, so it's a lot more restricted. It's it doesn't, there's a lot less people involved, and it's really, I would argue that it's a shell of what future job funds was. What
makes you so confident that Scotland wouldn't have such a system, or even a better system?
I don't think, as it's been said before, I don't think it's a case of can Scotland get these systems. I don't think it's a case of can Scotland be independent. That's not a question. Of course, we have resources here, we have people here. The question is to what cost, how much of this modern world can we emulate in a new Scotland? How much resources will we have going from 26 million population in the UK to 5 million in Scotland?
Thanks very much for that, Daniel. Yeah. Darren, would you like to come back on any of the points Darren raised?
I definitely. The aspect of partnerships. First of all, I've got a lot of time for that argument. I could make a strong argument for the union as well. I think in order to really
engage, good experiences of the union.
In order to engage with a debate, you've got to know both sides of it pretty well, and then it comes down to your principles. And I think we share the same values, to be honest. In terms of the partnerships, in terms of the idea that this is a partnership between four countries, that what you see is you can see how language over the centuries has been distorted. So what you really have is Northern Ireland, which was part of Ireland, so that was invaded, and because the rest of Ireland didn't agree with that sort of policy, then Britain kind of starved it into submission. And then you have Scotland, who under economic pressure, because of a failed attempt to set up colonies in South America, then the small amount of people who were entitled to a vote back then basically took bribes for Westminster. And so what is often portrayed to us as a partnership through the educational establishments that we have, and I understand the education system in Scotland's different for what it is in England. Yep. But I mean, when you're dealing with privilege, then privilege being the people who decide what we get taught, then you're going to see the world through that lens. So I think I would contend with the idea that it's partnerships. What it is a normalisation of imperial relations. Okay. And what we see is Britain attempting to do that again and again and time again the world over. I think that it is right to point out, though, that the idea of independence in and of itself is a myth. He's right. It's about interdependency, and so what independence offers us is the opportunity to decide for ourselves what things we want to depend on. So, the nuclear weapons argument is something that's kind of mainstream now, and that's good. I think that's appropriate. Yeah. But there are other aspects as well. In general, I think what Britain represents is a very aggressive consumer culture, where basically what happens is the population, because we don't make enough stuff anymore to sell, then Britain lives off its people. Britain lives off its own people, and in order to be able to make them economically active, then it has to almost farm them, which means not only give them economic things like loads of shops to spend our money in, but it also has to instill them with compulsions to spend money. And so what we have is a kind of infantile culture where people don't see the implications of the life that they lead. So what we have in Britain is great, and see if there is a no vote, then fair enough. But see, if you look behind the curtain of that freedom that we have here, we have to take all sorts of other freedoms from people all around the world just to preserve our almost mindless consumer culture.
Can you explain that a little bit more, please?
Aye, well, I mean, if you look at British foreign policy, which is now strongly aligned with American policy, obviously, because that's the dominant superpower, then what you see is the level of privilege in both societies, in both governments, the level of privilege of the elite is so strong that they not only feel entitled to have opinions about what goes on in other countries, but feel entitled to intervene in all sorts of ways, and then lie to our faces about their intentions when they go into these countries. And we are very much protected. Our news tells us, these images might be disturbing. Do you think that they tell the kids in the school in Gaza, like they drop a bomb before they drop the bomb to warn them that a bomb is coming? There's no messages trying to sanitise it. It's total brutality, and that's the real language that we use in the global stage. But people in this country are protected from the reality of that, because if they seen it and they felt it in their heart, they wouldn't stand for it. They would not stand for it.
And independence will open up people's eyes, you think?
What we're seeing in the Yes movement is people looking beyond their own interests in life. So what we've got is a struggle, the classic struggle between the individualist look and the collective look. And I think it is a bit of both, because there is no collective without, conscious individuals engaging. However, a lot of that sort of, as long as I'm alright, and as long as I'm alright, then it's cool. I think what Daniel was saying about his experience in school's dead positive. School gets shouted down a lot, and I'm one of the most vocal people against some of the things that go on in schools. But what I can tell you is that when I leave the school and maybe go and work in the prison, the kids that didn't get through school, like me and Daniel, because we are kind of privileged in a way, our family setup maybe was just alright enough that we managed to make it through because we've got those emotional capabilities.
Sure.
Some people don't have that, man.
Of course, yep.
They're raised like animals, and then they go into these institutions where they're supposed to be rehabilitated, but at the same time there's no look or further investigation into the social conditions which created their problematic behaviour in the first place. And listen, folks, see if you're listening, I'm sorry if I'm talking a wee bit of jargon here, I'm sorry if some of the things I'm saying might sound a bit West Endy or whatever, but it's just the way I'm used to talking about this a lot, know what I mean? So
Sure, and sometimes there's no other words as well.
Aye.
Daniel, you anything to say about that?
No, I think, a lot of it's what Darren's saying is totally on point. I totally agree. From my experience with school, I think, it's extremely valuable. But what I feel is that some people don't benefit at all from an academic structure, and there isn't the diversity in schools to cater to everyone's individual learning process. And what you see as a result of that is people who have amazing capabilities artistically, musically, fall through the cracks because they can't adapt to an academic structure. And I think what's important about that is that I would like to dispel the myth, first of all, that people think that voting no is, it's an opposition against change. Voting no isn't an opposition against change. I am under no illusion that this united nation could be of better standard, could present more opportunities, could have more equality in it. But opposing independence means that I oppose one form of change, and I'm an ambassador of change. I advocate change. I fully support it.
Okay, it seems to me there's going to be a few issues that people that are sitting on the fence right now need clarification on, and let's talk about some of them. The main one is currency and money.
Okay.
Any suggestions, Darren, about money?
Well, obviously the currency aspect is really important. However, there's a lot of other underlying issues about what do we spend our money on, what kind of things are we encouraged to buy with our money. I mean, for example, people might be concerned about their benefits, right? And so that's people living on less than maybe £80 a week or whatever, right? So that's natural. They're living in constant stress and strain. Some of them might not be able to take up jobs. And so what happens is then they go at the job centre and they turn on their telly or they open their newspaper, and basically people of that calibre in their class are getting demeaned demeaned by educated journalists and TV producers, demeaned with poverty porn, where there's no further investigation into what actually is going on in a person's heart and mind. It's all about looking at a person and reducing them to this economic servant. And the weird thing is, the argument, I'll go back to currency, but I'm trying to move away from the mainstream stuff, right? But I know why you need to bring it up.
Sure.
So look, you've got the whole kind of media zeitgeist out there, which has got this one narrative, which is, here, if you're poor, it's your fault. If you're poor, it's your fault. If you're in the jail, it's because you're a wee animal. That is the prevailing kind of orthodoxy just now. But see those people who get decried by the Daily Mail say, look at the people with their tellies. Look at the people with the leather couch. How can they afford to smoke all the fags? The reason that they spend their money on those things is because those things give them a little bit of respite for the chronic stress. And also, they don't just buy it out of choice. They're being manipulated by billion-dollar advertising people. The same people at the top of our government and this elite, this elusive elite we talk about, they're really just dead savvy businessmen and women. That's what they are. So they just move around revolving doors, and they themselves are apparently educated but can't identify the links between their kind of conflict of interests at every juncture. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry if that's not clear enough, but people want to just talk about, is it going to be a pound, is it going to be this and that? I want to talk about what we're actually spending money on.
Sure, that is important as well. That is very important. But Daniel, what do you think? Do you think Scotland, if it goes independent, should be allowed to have the pound?
You know, yeah, I mean, it makes, as I've said, it's economic sense to share the pound. What's worrying is the fact that we're being told we can't, so we can't make that assumption that we're going to have it when they're saying no. If you go for a job interview and there are 4 panellists and 3 of them say, I'm not giving you the job, and one says, I'm giving you the job, you don't turn up on the Monday. That's common sense. So what you need to do is we need to prepare, and I believe that, you know, we are doing that. Truthfully, it's not my biggest concern. You know,
sure.
We're going to have a currency. It might cost more than, you know, adopting into the union. But I would say what's in most people's mind just now is that we're going to be in some, you know, economic partnership with the pound. But again, you can't take that for granted. It's a double-edged sword. It's again, is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? People are saying we'll get the pound because it makes sense, and then you've got the other ones saying, well, the bit more cynical, pessimistic, are saying, well, you know, that's been said, we won't get that. So
right,
it's definitely something that needs clarified.
So like that's your kind of standard currency argument there, and that's all fair and good. What I'm saying is let's move beyond that, because do you know anybody who was concerned about the currency before the media started talking about the currency?
No, really.
No, because why? Because they dictate the terms of the debate, and then we all exist in that narrow frame of reference. So all these things that we all claim to be passionate about have all been instilled in us through the media. The things I care about is more democratic freedom. The things I care about is challenging mindless consumerism. A lot of people assume that I'm just this mad socialist, this rabid mad like Tommy Sheridan afterbirth or something. But the truth is, I would like to see a more conscious form of capitalism. I would like to see companies told that they have to ascribe to certain principles about human well-being and the environment before they're entitled to make obscene profits. So I just want a re-emphasis, and I think that then you would see a transition to a more human-centred kind of society, which would have a positive effect on everybody. But see those alternative ideas that you might hear being espoused by the Commonweal, for example. If people haven't heard the Commonweal, go and check it out.
Yeah.
Then what they've done is they've not just said this is just our dreamy fairy idea of how it might be. They've actually investigated and went around the world and looked at instances of different things that have worked in other countries and talking about trying to develop that here. Now, whether it's a yes or no vote, I would very much like to see a movement in that direction, at least maybe not in that guise, but even a discussion about actually reimagining society, reimagining culture, society.
So you basically are saying as well that people are missing the real important issues, which aren't the pound. So what do you think are the important issues?
Well, I mean, I outlined a lot of them. There, and for me, I think, I'll just come for a personal aspect, right? Sure. Like, I grew up in Pollock. When I grew up, people would get stabbed every week, shot, right? Whether I was in my house or out of my house or in school, I was faced with a threat of violence in some form, right? Maybe no physical violence, but that was there, right? I left Pollock, my family were under a lot of stress. A lot of people know my story to the point where it almost has no emotion attached to it. But the reality is, if you grow up in a community and you feel that pain, and the people around you feel it, not just family, but the community at large. I mean, I've stood by and watched community centres burn down, people being beat up in the street. It's just like, you think, when you watch the telly, that the truth of that stuff's not coming out. It's always painted almost in this entertaining pornographic fashion.
Okay.
The actual human distress that's going on is increasing, and what we see for all the academic evidence, books like The Spirit Level, for example, where they're actually
who writes that?
They're going. It's a couple of people wrote it,
okay.
and there's a documentary about it coming out this year, hopefully, actually, by Dartmoor Films. Anyway, what it outlines is similar to Commonweal, except it takes all the economic arguments and challenges them. So basically, folks, if you're listening, see when you reach 25,000 salary, you materially cannot achieve any more. You can't get any better. The rest of your disposable income's just spent on amassing things. You already have access to food, you have access to electricity, clean water, a roof over your head. Now maybe the standards of that living might be negotiable within that 0 to 25,000 range, but you hit a glass ceiling, and everything over and above that contributes to what we call diseases of affluence. That's your diabetes, your obesity. So when we're talking about dismantling the health service and privatising it because we can't afford to run it, then who are the people that are going in there? It's all the people who are suffering from the mindless consumerism, and it's affecting their mentality, it's affecting their bodies, this egotistical culture of which I'm a prime suspect, and sure. I know the pain of it. Well, it's all about me and me, how do I look, and worshipping pictures of ourselves while criticising Chinese people for worshipping pictures of supreme leaders.
Okay, even if Scotland does go independent, no, we're still going to be inflicted to media from across the globe, and that's going to influence people. Daniel, any points to pick up on what Dan said there?
No, I'm just listening intently here.
Sure.
You know, I agree with what Darren's saying, is that, you know, probably beyond all the economic statistics we're getting, beyond what's my income going to be, what's my currency going to be, where's my health service going to be, beyond that, I think as soon as people hear the question of independence, they make a snap judgment based on their own morals and their own values and what they stand for as a person. And what people tend to do, or what I've noticed a lot of people do, and spoke to a lot of people, and I feel everyone's been guilty about this, is they've made a snap decision and they've went looking for evidence that fits into that decision. So whether that be, you know, yes, I want independence, let me support that, or whether no, I think it's better in your union because I support the army, I support the Queen. I mean, myself, I'm quite a rarity in the way that I was raised Catholic. I was raised as, you know, not a hatred towards England, but not that partnership feeling towards England. And what I've noticed, you know, through my artistic timeline, that I've came into contact with lots of people in England through battle raps, through collaborations, and there has been some people that are, makes me less, you know, likely to think fondly of that country. And that's not to mean I would generalise everyone. I feel this campaign, this independence referendum is causing separation and generalisation. Too many times I've seen yes voters saying all no voters are this and that, and all no voters saying all yes people are this and that.
Sure.
I think what people need to focus on is, you know, if you can search through economic data from now until the referendum, where is that going to get you? You know, what you need to do is you need to look at your own values, you need to look at what you support, what you stand for. How is this going to affect your role in the community, your role in employment, education, your role as an active job seeker anywhere? Sure. And how are you going to support that?
Darren, you had your hand up there.
Aye, man. Changed days here that I would raise my hand to speak. I think pointing out the separation and division is really important. However, let's not forget what the root of that is. The root of that is because of the status quo. So the status quo produces the division, it produces the confusion. The status quo produces all of this negative feeling that we're talking about right now. That's a byproduct of a government system which represents the interests of a minority of people who actually hold the privilege in order to enact things that are in their interest. And you see all the things about the union that are good. And I could just list them off, you know, everything from lollipop men and ladies to the fire service. You know, there's lots of great things about it that say about our intentions as a country. However, slowly but surely, those things are kind of being outweighed by people's frustrations about the kind of the contradiction in morals. Like, I want to be in a country where politicians don't feel so confident about lying to my face. End of story. You know, end of story.
Okay.
Nick Clegg was being paraded as the new Obama all across Europe. He was being paraded as the new Obama in Westminster. Look how quick that guy sold out.
Sure. What about that point, Daniel, that Scotland never gets a government actually votes for?
Well, I would disagree. You know, it's 2/3 of the time they get a government they vote for, and of course, you know, there's always that argument. Well, shouldn't we have it 100% of the time? You know, Scotland we have as much people in Scotland as London have, and London's a city in itself, essentially.
Sure.
There is no way. There is no answer that I can give you. There's nothing that I can say that you know is going to say, well, you know, the Scottish people are always going to get the government they vote for if they stay in the union, because it's not. And it's about weighing up the benefits, the practicality, and of course there's bad things in the union. There's horrible things in the union, and there are great things in the Yes campaign, and there's things I support in the Yes campaign, and there's things that I dislike in the union. But overall, my support lies with staying in this partnership, in this, you know, in this union that we're in.
Well, let's take it back a wee bit to something that's maybe more relative to us right now in the studio. Okay. Music.
That's interesting.
How do you think being better in the union, does it benefit your music? Or will it?
Being in the union, you know, I'm not entirely sure. I know that the UK has a creative industry of 75 billion. It generates £1.8 million per hour. That's a lot of money going into our creative industries, into our, you know, our film and photography, into our music, into our studios, into our communities. What we're seeing now is that
does it come into our communities, or does it just stay in London and the media centres?
Not exactly. No, you've got the BBC, you've got STV, you've got, you know, there's loads of studios up here that contribute towards the creative industries. We as artists ourselves, whether we sell one record, whether we sell millions of records, we contribute something to that industry, to the creative culture of Scotland. And whether that's, you know, you're giving away free downloads, maybe we're not contributing financially, but we are, our human resources are so culturally. Yeah, culturally we're going towards it. In terms of, you know, will it be better in the union? What I would argue is probably, you know, you see guys like Mac Miller and Macklemore, and guys who have excelled, Tech9, who have came up the ranks, never had a major record label. And what I feel now is that this is going off on a tangent completely, but that's fine. Apple and downloads, you know, and Spotify have changed the demographics for music downloading and the need for record labels, because it's so easy to publish your music now that nobody really needs a label exec taking 80% off of you, because it is perfectly feasible to capture a market on your own. Independently.
He's making an argument for independence. All those artists are independent artists who are acting in their own interests and are not impeded by the requirements of someone who has to okay things, right? So I mean, that's maybe a bit of a cheeky incision to make there, but it is an argument for the principle of independence and autonomy, but in a creative context.
Okay, what would you say, Darren, about is our music, will it be more?
Here, see if I'll frame it like this, right? See, in life so far, the people in the music community, you know, the hip hop community or whatever, who have been up there almost on a mainstream level or lauded in some way, it's because they have kind of contorted their own identity in order to ascend. And so what I mean by that is, you know, take Syllable and Brains.
Okay.
Right. So
for the people who don't know who Syllable and Brains
is the biggest story of Scottish hip hop ever, and it's about two artists when they were younger, under pressure from the local community to not rap Scottish. They rapped an American accent in their first gig. They got a record deal and kind of like shot to the top of the music industry. Were about to come out, but obviously it was all based on a lie because they weren't American, but they maintained that lie. So it's a big story. Apparently, of course, when that story was portrayed via the BBC, ultimate peddler of amazing culture, then what they missed was the fact that what they missed was the root of the suffering of these two people who were hoodwinked by the industry, who saw them as completely disposable products. It never focused on the fact that one of them actually they became pathological liars. That's quite a disturbing aspect of what happened, and this was all because of them. They were instilled with a compulsion for fame that they couldn't see because they were too young. So they ascended quickly because they adopted the ultimate privilege value, the American accent, because that represents power. So you adopt that, boom, boom. Same with Young Fathers. Now, I'm not saying that I'm not criticising these artists, and I know that they know that I'm not criticising them because no one wants an argument about it.
Of course.
What I'm just talking about here is the facts. Whereas you've got other artists who have to work twice as hard by keeping their own identity, and then the British papers will call us introverted. They'll call you small-minded because you don't renounce who you actually are. Somehow being who you are is not entertaining in this culture. And I can't stomach it. I can't stomach it. I will not adopt anybody's values, and if I don't ascend, then fine. But they know we're here, they know we're here, so
for their reasons you think you're going to be more fruitful as an artist in an independent Scotland?
Oh, I mean, when I got over the idea for a while, especially when I was drinking, I think I kind of wanted to adopt the language, the middle class lifestyle, hang around in West End parties, take hunters of cocaine, and talk about Irving Welsh. I really I loved that for a wee while, but they don't know why that was. I wanted to do that because I couldn't stomach myself. So I was quick to adopt those values, and even in my hard times I had wee periods where I ascended quite quickly. Job opportunities were coming, the name was getting about blah blah blah, but you know what, the shoe didn't fit, so I just didn't wear it. And if anything, me personally, if anything, I'm more me than I've ever been. I'm more in tune with who I am. I'm happy with my flaws, I'm happy with the good things about me, and I just don't pay too much attention to people who think they're really intelligent telling me that if I want to be successful I have to change who I actually am.
Okay, fair point. Anything to say to that, Daniel?
No, what I would add is, right, I'm going to say a wee story which demonstrates the sort of mind frame of this whole indie referendum. Okay, so a few months ago I released a video on YouTube called "We Are Not a United Kingdom." Immediately that was named that to attract people to, because my views on it were kind of known at that point that I wasn't a supporter of it. So what I wanted to do was show the ambiguity, the distinct line between independence and in the union, and basically put the arguments on either side. The arguments are there, and what the video depicts is that no matter what the information is we're given, you as a person will decide, independence is the solution to that, or in the union is the solution to that. So if you look at the video, I'm talking about child poverty, I'm talking about war and just finance and things like that. Now what Darren pulled me up about there and said, I was making an argument for independence on artists who go independently. I would argue more that the reason they excelled was because there was ample resources and opportunity that was available to them through a very, very rich and very, diverse creative industry. Now, if I was an independent artist in an independent Scotland, the opportunity wouldn't be as great because there isn't enough money. There might be more. There isn't the resources. That £74 billion is never going to be less than Scotland. What Scotland can generate, we cannot generate 74 billion on our own, so we cannot create those opportunities.
Thanks very much for that, Daniel. Would you like to add something before we move on, Darren?
No, I mean, I think it's a good point, but obviously, like this, the idea that being part of the union with Britain is the only economic option we have, and if we dislocate from that, then somehow we're going to be out in the middle of nowhere, in the galaxy somewhere on our own, floating about in a tartan biscuit tin. You know, there's a whole global market out there, not just a global market, but there are countries who are looking at alternative ways of doing business, moving to more resource-based economies that take into consideration human well-being. Well, there's not a dollar sign placed on every single thing in this world, and the problem we have is this culture reinforces its own legitimacy to the point where people think that they're talking in defence of it, and they probably can't even trace back those ideas as emanating from themselves. You know what I mean? Sure. That's the sort of, I'm not talking about Daniel there, I'm talking about the people who are put on our telescreens who are apparently intelligent.
Thanks very much for that. We're going to move on to the next part of our show in a few minutes' time. We're going to take some calls. If anybody wants to phone in, would you be happy to take a call from the community, guys?
Yeah.
To answer some points.
Of course.
You can phone us in, folks. The number is 0141 445 3235. That's 0141 445 3235. And we'll also get into all your tweets and all your texts, and we'll respond to them after this as well.
Dear Britannia, things aren't right, we have to face it. I don't appreciate the procrastination, I'm just saying. It's not like you're pure amazing and I'm fed up feeling like the poor relation. And I don't appreciate your passive aggression. Is it too much to ask that you answer my questions? So I'm writing this metaphor. I said it before, but I put more into us than you ever give me credit for. We're needing some help. What makes you think I can't speak for myself? And as for the division of wealth, I'm a 1,000-year-old country. Surely I'm old enough now to look after my own money. As for that nonsense about me being destitute, hey, and I got the same damn group of friends as you. So stop implying that if you were to get shot at me, France, Germany and Spain wouldn't talk to me. I feel like I'm banging my head off a brick wall. P.S. Do you think of me at all? Faithfully yours, Caledonia. Dear Caledonia, this grief is something that I wouldn't miss. I'm tired of having to keep you in food and drink. Since Culloden, it's been like a constant battle, with you causing me nothing but hassle when you've been hellily short-tempered lately. I thought we'd agreed to forgive and forget the 1980s. I told you before how I actually felt. I just don't think you can be trusted to look after yourself. I know sometimes I don't give you enough attention, but I've got a lot on my plate with the current recession. As for being mature enough to handle your financial payments, look at Greece, she's older than you and they just called in the bailiffs. You show nothing but poor judgment, why should I trust it? Your tram fiasco, way over budget. Your parliament building, way over budget. And you wonder why I don't want to discuss it? Stop meddling, you're being childish and petulant. You wouldn't fare well in a divorce settlement, accept it. I know better, I don't need this added pressure. P.S. Weren't we always good together? Sincerely yours, Britannia. Britannia, I don't appreciate your tone, wind your neck in. Don't even get me started on the years of oppression. Every time I need money for spending, I shouldn't need to come begging for you to give it your blessing. I'm not a lapdog, a pet of a petulant Wayne. I'm an equal and I expect to get treated that way. I'm setting it straight. This is hardly blissful matrimony. I've got resources, so I shouldn't have to ask for money. I support myself, so don't mention alimony. And I don't
so to call in to take part in tonight's debate,
so tell your mates in Fasley.
Phone number for that is 0141 445 3235.
Says you're blind to the fact.
That's to call in and to take part in tonight's independence debate. That's 0141 445 3235.
And it's like a smoke screen I'm struggling to see through. P.S. Half of me doesn't really want to leave you. Caledonia, bitch, moan, give me a break. All you ever seem to do is complain. Maybe it's all that booze in your brain, or you're woozy again from the smack running through your veins. You're nothing but a drain on me, and it's plain to see you've developed more unhealthy habits that I seem to need to pay to keep. Basically, you need to stop your foolish ways, stop pulling away and start pulling your weight. Pulling my weight? Who do you think you're talking to? This is exactly what makes me want to walk away. I'm tired of stating all my reservations. I think maybe we should try a trial separation. You're blatantly economic with the facts. Arrogant, self-centered, living in the past. Reliving your former glory most days now. Back when you were the biggest bully in the playground. A shadow of your former self, and it's plain to see you're falling apart and trying to put the blame on me. I used to make things, inventions. You curbed my creativity, held me back and injured me by ending my industry. All I'm saying is the balance isn't right. Either change or I'm leaving, it's decision time. Decisions? You don't have the power to make those, and you're going nowhere unless I say so. You're useless. Who else would want you but me? All the plans that you make end in constant defeat. You think we're really through? All that's left of you is disease and booze, and you can't see the truth, obsessed with green and blue. After all we've been through, I'd be doing you a favour keeping you. Pipe down and stop being so mouthy. The truth is you'd be nothing without me. An alcoholic, sectarian, illiterate lout. I'm providing the medicine, you're just spitting it out. Without me you wouldn't last 2 minutes. In fact, I don't even care if we're finished.
If you've just joined us, you're listening to Sunny G, Glasgow's community station. We're having a very special programme tonight, debating independence with two of Scotland's finest hip-hop artists. My man, Wee D, a.k.a. Daniel Quinn, and Loki, a.k.a. Darren McGarvey.
Yep.
You still there, guys? You okay?
Yep.
Excellent,
Okay, yep.
excellent. If anybody does want to talk to us tonight, I believe that you have been very eloquent and you might have scared people from phoning, but that's fine as well. The number for that is 445-3235. I know Thomas in Paisley was wanting to talk to you, but he's vanished now.
Oh, Thomas.
I've got a few tweets here, let me see. The first one says, to ask you guys, did you know that Scottish Parliament can be taken away at any time? Did you know that?
Yes.
I can't say I did.
Okay,
No.
I did know that either.
Yes, it's part of what you see a state does. People often think that, but why would we leave Britain? Look at all the great things they've given us. Every single thing we have is a concession that they made because they were under threat, because force was being used in some form or another, and that's whether it's in your employment rights, that's whether it's the NHS, welfare, women getting the vote. In America it's the same, civil rights, the New Deal in the 30s. All of those things were as a result of social movements, and so the Scottish Parliament is just really a concession, a big miscalculation as well by the Labour Party back then, who thought this will shut them up, but it didn't, because it'll never end until we're independent. That's just the way it is.
Okay, now the tweet says, do you know about the Barnett formula?
Yeah.
Okay, tell us about that, Daniel.
The Barnett, no, I haven't done much research into it. That's the agreement that we have, isn't it?
The Barnett formula is basically a calculation done which produces the amount and proportion of UK income which is then diverted to Scotland for us to spend on the things that are devolved to us. So that's basically the formula used to decide how much money we get.
Okay, the questions were from Scottish singer Eddie Reader. Big shout to you, Eddie Reader. You may be
Is he trying to make us look stupid, aye?
He's trying,
because it's not working.
It won't work in here, Eddie
Aye.
Reader. Come on. You know that. Nah, I don't think so. So, guys, September the 18th. It's only 3 weeks away tomorrow. We only have 10 minutes left of this programme, and I want you to use that time to try and get any people who are maybe sitting debating what way to go right now, that may be fed up listening to Salmond and Darren and whoever banging on about whatever. I would like you to use the next 5 minutes each to tell the people why they should vote respectively for staying in the Union or an independent Scotland.
Right.
Okay, before that though, I would like to take a call. Is that okay with you guys? The phone
fine.
just rang there, so let me just see who that is.
Okay.
And just like that, they're away. Okay,
Go on.
so sorry about that. If you would like to start this, Daniel, please.
Yep. My argument, as I said before, for people, it's not rooted within the economics. It's been understood that if we go independent, the next 5 years are going to be hard. Tax raises, raises in energy bills. That's out with my values. To me, my values lie in partnership. My values lie in this shared economy, the shared resources which we have, the opportunity which is presented through 4 different countries all putting their weight into one central location, one central ambition. What we all have in these 4 countries is we have topics of which we're all striving to hit, targets which we're all striving to hit. And that's stuff like poverty, that's stuff like employment, that's stuff like education, healthcare.
Who's that?
It's things like that we're all striving towards, and to separate, to pursue those things individually doesn't make sense to me. If I was if I was striving for something individually and I found someone else who was striving towards it, my natural instinct would be to say, let's go for this together to increase our chances. And I think that with having those ambitions in mind, with having that partnership, having that unity and that that collective ambition towards one goal is what drives us forward.
Okay.
You know, it's going to be, what's annoying me now is that people are thinking, you know, that a no vote is for status quo, and it isn't, because regardless of whether it's a no vote, regardless of whether it's a yes vote, from here on in, September 19th is a new Scotland regardless. It's going to be what this campaign has shown, you know, Westminster, is that we want more prosperous opportunities, regardless of whether that's, you know, we want to get them ourselves, or we want you on board when we're striving for these targets, when we're striving towards our ambitions. If you're undecided, you know, you can spend from now to September 17th looking over all the information you want. You can question what the currency is going to be, you know, how much oil is there. It doesn't really matter. Under that, you need to think about, you know, what are your own values, what are your morals, what impact will this have on your economy, what impact will it have in your community. And, you know, above all else, what I would argue is don't base this in Darren, because so don't base it in Salmond. No voters, no, actually 81% of undecided voters have said that they would be more likely to vote for independence if Salmond wasn't in charge. And it isn't a vote for Salmond, it isn't a vote for Darling, it isn't a vote for SNP, it isn't a vote for Tories, it isn't a vote for Westminster, it's a vote for partnership, unity, you know, opportunity.
Thanks very much for that, Daniel. Before we come to Darren's final points, we do have a caller on the phone. Are you there, caller?
How you doing?
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, James, have you got a little question or a point you would like to make?
Basically, it's really all I've been hearing in these debates is obviously the currency, it's been oil, it's been the Trident, and really it was Darren made it very articulate. It's actually the poverty that we have just now due to the Welfare Reform Act. I've heard nothing, you know, that's elaborated on poverty and how, you know, Scotland is going to fix that gap for people using food banks. Okay,
you're really concerned about the state of Scotland currently.
It's a good point. It's dead important. Have you got more you want to add to that before?
Well, I've just finished a course which is Bridges Out of Poverty, which talks about obviously it's the economic class and how, you know, they basically, you know, are running things, you know. And interesting that Darren raised a book by Richard Wilkinson and Kate Pickett, which was The Spirit Level. And if anybody's listening, I recommend you pick that book up and you read it.
Okay, thank you very much for that, James. We just need to fire through. We're running out of time.
Cool,
Darren,
man.
I know you want to give us a few.
I'll be as quick as I can.
That's fine.
What he's talking about there is the poverty, and the thing that isn't really touched upon, even by the politicians of both sides, is that poverty is structural in this country. So it's not something that we're going to eradicate. It's something that we see as a necessary part of our kind of aggressive capitalist society. Now, that's not acceptable. It's just not acceptable anymore. The other issue is that some of the opportunity that Daniel's remarking on based in the union, a lot of this opportunity is kind of prescribed and chaperoned by not privileged people, but people who don't come from the poorer communities. So really the opportunity goes to a kind of middle class who then get people in, and what that is a poverty industry. So what you have is, you have your structural poverty, and then in order to deal with that and manage that, we create a poverty industry which puts people who are already educated into well-paid positions so that they can get poor people to come and volunteer. Sure. And that's how it works. And so that's wrong on a lot of levels. Now listen folks, I'll be voting yes because you know, when I actually just get really honest about how I feel about life, I feel disheartened sometimes. I feel like anytime I try to make a positive life choice for the benefit of my own health, for the benefit of people around me, I'm faced with countless barriers, and a lot of them are really subtle to the point I can't see them. Things like, I go into Asda, I'm trying to stop eating because I'm hooked on sugar to the point where I'll just eat a whole packet of Haribo in 2 minutes, right? Now I'm not realising I've got teeth falling out of my mouth, and when I go into Asda for a pint of milk, I have to walk right to the back of the shop and have to go traverse millions and millions of junk food and sweets and crap everywhere. And that's what they want your kids to eat. That's what they're sneaking into the chocolate bars that say they've got fruit in them. Now look, that is corporations and intelligent people who have more knowledge about the human psyche and the human genome and everything about us, and they use that to prey on our frailty. That's what our economy is based on. Farming us for consumption. End of story. There's no debate about it. That's what it is. Okay. Any other opportunity that comes out of that is very fleeting and sparing, just like the joy that you feel when you take that first sip of the coffee, followed by the anxiety and the confusion. So it's an engine room of consumption, and that's what we're living in. That's the soup that we're living in. And I just feel like in order for us to stay where we are, they make us focus on ourselves so much. What are we going to lose? How do I look? This economy is about making women think they're fat. This economy is about making kids think they need to be aggressive and fight in order to be cool. This economy is about peddling soap operas, TV shows, game shows that trivialise everything. There is no investigation into the actual the spiritual damage being done to humanity because of the way that this society is working. And you know what all that's backed up by? That comfortable illusion behind the curtain. It's all backed up by military aggression, very often against other countries where we've installed people there to do our bidding over there. It's about us getting the resources we need. Do you know why we need oil? So you can put it in your motor and drive to Asda. That's why we need oil. That's why we need oil. So we're all implicated in this. I'm not sitting here like some sort of moral beacon. What I'm talking about is I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. I want an opt-out option. I want to say, you know what, I'm not going to just kind of half participate in this culture anymore. I detest it. I detest it, and I'd happily dismantle it brick by brick if I had big enough horns.
All in. Mr. McGarvey, you're all in.
Oh, no doubt.
Thank you very, very much for that, Daniel Quinn, VD. Thank you very, very much. It makes me really proud actually to have you two guys in the studio, hip hop colleagues of mine, friends as well, taking up the issues on both sides quite passionately, very eloquently, and I hope if people are undecided do it there, you've helped them to make their mind up a little bit. Got a little couple of texts here, just to read it before we finish. Texter 388 says, I have to ask you again about the currency. Apparently he's a worse than Darren. I don't know who they're meaning.
Who was it?
They're not saying any names, they're just saying.
Right, okay. So what do they want to know? They just want us to elaborate on the currency issue? I
think they were meaning you were well...
Right, so currency's backed up by a central bank,
right? Were ducking the issue a wee bit.
Currency's backed up by a central bank.
In 10 seconds.
What a central bank does is print money out of thin air. So our economy isn't actually a real economy. It's not backed up by anything. So this is one of the subtle illusions that gets peddled to people who think they know what they're talking about. Central bank dictates economic policy. How can a bank have more authority than a government? The government represents the people. Who does the bank represent?
It's a fair point. Texter 022, they've wrote a bit of a book here actually. They say, I'll be voting yes because we should have control of our own country. We've been part of a system that's been systematically lied to. People's been ripped apart. The NHS has been thrown away, creating a bigger gap between the rich and poor. Would you take a job and let someone control your finance? Only Scotland's people has its best interests at heart. Text goes on a bit, but I believe that's pro yes as well.
Right, okay.
Daniel, I want to give you the final say on this, okay? Because Darren just had a little say there, and the last texter seemed to be a bit pro yes as well.
Right.
Just for balance, please.
Okay, right. I would argue that, if you take a job, your finance is dictated by someone else. As Darren was saying, your finance is dictated by a corporate market, and that's regardless if it's an independent Scotland or a union. That's going to happen. I've been speaking to a guy recently called John Bird, who runs The Big Issue, the founder of The Big Issue, and he released a book a few years ago called The Necessity of Poverty, and he quite rightly outlines that people capitalise on poverty, but it's communities, depressed, oppressed communities that drive poverty forward and create a need for it, and through this poverty there is opportunity for people that shouldn't be but do. People like John Bird, who saw a gap in the market and said, you know what, I'm going to help poverty by capitalising on it. I'm going to make my fortune, but at the same time I'm going to give all these people that are in poverty jobs. So poverty, regardless of anything, poverty is a necessity. It's a necessity to an economy, and I'm not saying that, you know, with my Tory wig on. I don't talk about political beliefs much prior to the independence.
Okay, controversial
but I'm not,
statement to leave on poverty is an essential part of an economy.
Well, that's came across quite wrong actually. But what I'm saying is economy. Poverty can drive an economy forward, and no matter how much money you throw at poverty, there is always going to be, it exists everywhere, and whether that's you know, whether that's in Easterhouse, whether that's down in Manchester, poverty exists everywhere. You're not going to eradicate it.
Thanks very much for that, Daniel. Thank you as well, Loki. I would like you to give the people your Twitters or your Facebooks, whatever you like to share with the people, so they can go and check out your music after the show. Okay. My Twitter, I believe, is at @we_D, or you can get me on Facebook by just looking for WeD.
Mine is at Loki Scottish Rap.
Okay, thank you very much, guys. Thanks for listening, people. Keep it tuned to Sunny G 103.5 FM.